Welcome to Wisdom Blogs. My name's Liza Collins and my guest today is my good friend Eva Fernandes. Eva is a pioneer of grassroots change. She has had a successful eco baby equipment business in the past. She's also the managing director for Human Milk and is an advocate for breastfeeding. And she also set up the Baby Bank in Bristol, which is like a library for taking in baby products and equipment that are no longer needed and offering them out to other people as a way of recycling. Eva, welcome to Wisdom Blogs. I'm so glad that you're my first guest. And today we're going to talk about minimalist parenting, which you've written an article about, which we will link below. Do you want to talk to us about your wisdom around minimalist parenting?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me, Liza. It's great to be here. And we chat about these things a lot in our kind of personal lives. So it's great to kind of have it now as a video so that other people can share in what we have to say. Yeah. So minimalist parenting really is it's come from my experience of having run a business that sells nursery products. So I had that business for 16 years that was set up with my sister and it was about bringing to the public things that they couldn't get on the high street. So organic toiletries, organic cotton clothing, washable nappies, things that, and also things that were made to last, so pushchairs that were going to last you for 2, 3, 4 kids, rather than just one that's going to last you for a year or so and then break down. And furniture that was built to grow with a child as well. Again, that wasn't just made for a few months. And in doing that business, I also was kind of led down other paths around parenting. And when it came to terms that people use, like attachment parenting or sustainable parenting or whatever, or being an earth mother, I suppose. But for me, were just kind of the things that I just knew as a child and adult, because that was the way I was parented. So it was my norm, really. So the things that I've written about in the blog are related to minimalist mothering and just living sustainably as a parent, because if you're a new parent, you are kind of inundated with lots of messaging that makes you feel that you need to buy stuff in order to be good at mothering or parenting, and that was kind of contrary to me having a business, I suppose, that sold this stuff. But my justification in a way was I just was selling stuff that was made well, and you buy once and you don't need to buy again and again and again. So one of the things that kind of struck me was just the naivety of mothers. I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying that was kind of preyed upon by the nursery industry, which is a massive industry, and most of the stuff that the nursery industry sells is just really built for landfill. And I would go to trade shows and think, oh my God, no one needs this stuff in their life, let alone in their baby's life. How can we do it better? So and Baby Bank Network came about because of the need to support parents in that time of need. When you have a new baby, there's lots of things that you think you need, but actually you don't. And also stuff that babies just grow out of really, really quickly. So they'll be in newborn clothes for a week or two, or maybe a month if you're lucky, and then they need the next size of things. So it was actually, how can we support people by reusing this stuff and share and sort of sharing economy, that kind of thing. And it's a massively successful charity, partly because it's pretty much volunteer run, the whole thing, and because people kind of get that if they don't need this stuff, someone else can make good use of it. So the first thing that I kind of wrote about in the blog was baby mooning, and baby mooning is something that is now people are now becoming more aware of, and just the concept of it. But it's something that traditional cultures have done forever, and the idea is that when a mother has her baby, she stays at home for at least a month. I mean, in some cultures it's like 3 months is the baby moon. Why would you do anything less? And in that time, mum just beds in with baby, and it's another sort of term people use might be NINO or NINO, 9 in, 9 out. So after you've had the baby in your tummy for 9 months, it's on you for another 9 months afterwards, whether that's in bed or
I've not
in
used
a baby
that term before.
Yeah, in a baby sling, and you just bond. And because the baby inside you is part of you, you grew it, it's part of your body, and that extension happens for at least another 9 months afterwards. and that's part of attachment parenting kind of philosophy, I suppose, the 9 in, 9 out, and it just makes sense, really. I think it's how animals do it, and we are animals, you know. We might be human animals, but we're still mammals and need to be treating our baby our babies as such, really. So you know,
But just on that point there, though, I think it's interesting, because if you think about most paternity leave cover these days, men only get 2 weeks off, and so many families are scattered. So there's just not that support, I found, after 2 weeks. I mean, in a way, I had 2 C-sections, and so I had to was forced to rest. Otherwise, I know I'd probably be out those first couple of days wandering around. But I didn't do it in a way that was enjoyable and the focus around the kids. It was forced. And I felt frustrated because I couldn't move. But it almost feels like you need to have that support system around you. Going, like you said, going back to those traditional ways of doing it. And I fully agree with you. I think is one of the most important things that we need to do as new mums, is to have that mission. I know a friend of mine, she's from Tonga, and her mum did exactly that. She turned up on her first baby and she was like, "You're in bed." And she said she just took the baby off her, and she only brought her in when she needed feeding and cuddling, but she allowed her to rest and recover, and just spend that time nurturing with her baby, which I feel is just beautiful. But it feels like we need to kind of like change a few things to give us that support.
Yes, and you know, because we don't live necessarily near our parents or siblings, our sisters or brothers even, that can come and look after us, you know, we do need to, sometimes you need to pay for that, which means, you know, buying the services of a postnatal doula. There's nothing wrong with that, and actually that can then give you the benefit of all of that mothering, but without the, you know, having to do it your mother's way. You know, you could then have more of a choice in how you do it as well.
I didn't even realise that they were postnatal doulas. I thought there was a doula for birth. So that's a really important thing to mention here, then, that is available to people.
Yes, and there are people that I know, for example, in the Bristol area, who just provide that support. They don't do antenatal doulaing and birth doulaing. They actually do just postnatal doulaing to support mothers after they've had their babies. And so going back to, you know, when you're bedding in with your baby, and the importance of the skin to skin contact for bonding, and also the microbiome, because that's how the baby, you know, seeds its biome through you, through your skin, and through the bacteria that you carry on that. So, you know, you don't need to have a lot of baby clothes, if any, at that point. You know, just a nappy is absolutely fine, and baby and skin to skin, because your body regulates the baby's breathing and heart rate and all of those kind of things. So, you know, instead of spending money on a nursery, which is probably never going to be used much anyway, spend it on a boudoir if you want to. You know, so you've got a space where you can spend time just with your partner, and you know, and then they get some attention as well, and you get some needs met as well for physical contact. Because one of the things that mothers sometimes say is they're touched out. You know, their babies are constantly on them, and they're given that so much physical attention to their baby, that they need some as well. So it's important that you get those needs met, you know, and just, you know, being hugged and looked after and adored by your partner is really valuable as well. So the next thing on the list was the breastfeeding. And again, you know, bedding in with your baby means that you just concentrate on getting breastfeeding sorted. And again, you know, this would have been something that the elderly women in the village or community would have supported with. And if that doesn't happen, if you don't have that, then you're going to have to pay for a breastfeeding support person, you know, to come to your home or to do it virtually and give you that advice and support. And you know, people spend a lot of money on antenatal classes and things that just look at the birth, whereas the birth is a tiny proportion of what's going to happen in your life as a new parent. So actually go and do some research and spend some time either as a one-to-one with a breastfeeding consultant, or online resources or whatever, to understand, you know, how it works and what to expect, and so that you're not you know, kind of shocked by it. And Human Milk website has a lot of information. So that's human-milk.com, which you can hopefully link to.
I'll link,
loads of info on what to expect, what, you know, and why it's an important thing. I think we've again, due to marketing and advertising, we've kind of been duped into thinking that it's on a par with formula, and of course it really isn't. There is a lot going on with human milk that we know now, but we didn't know a few years ago, and we're still discovering in terms of what it contains and the benefits to baby and of course to mother.
Absolutely.
So the
And
kind of rationale.
just on that point
Yeah.
there as well, even before children, I know I've spoken to you about this. I always found it completely bizarre, the adverts for formula milk, because to me it felt like you've just cut your breast off and they've sold it back to you. You know, they're selling back something that you already possess. You know, so way before kids, I always thought that is just so bizarre. You know, this is something that we make ourselves, but we're being told, don't trust what we've got for our babies. Go and buy something else to feed them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that in the marketing to new parents, again feeding on their naivety, you know, sell you something to make money off of you that you can perfectly well do yourself, whether that's human milk or whether that's, you know, foods and things as you know, as your baby grows and gets bigger, processed things that are really, you know, you could just make yourself for pennies. So if you have to pay for breastfeeding support, you have to pay for it. There are services in the UK which are free, but you know, if things go wrong, you need that help now. You don't need it in 2 weeks time when you can happen to see someone, you know. So just before you have your baby, finding those resources that you might need to tap into, or doing some courses and to understand about breastfeeding. And then the next thing is baby wearing, so baby carrying. Having in a lot of cultures, just having your baby on your hip is pretty common, or in a sling, you know. My mum was like this with other kids I used to see her just carrying babies, and it's like kind of the normal thing. Just make it easier for yourself by having a decent sling. So either before you have your baby or afterwards, you know, you don't need to do this straight away because you don't need it for the baby mooning time really, apart from being around the house a little bit. Go to a sling meet, have a sling consultation with somebody, an expert who knows what they're talking about. That was one of the things we used to do in the shop a lot, was the sling fittings and finding the right sling, because there are now thankfully a lot of different brands out there.
There are, yeah.
Making sure you have ones that support you, support the baby, your back, and all of these things. And some are better for feeding in than others. Some are better for going for a hike, you know. So you might need a couple of different ones, but you know, investing in that rather than investing in a 3-in-1 pushchair that you're really not going to use that much, you know. So yeah, and those things, you know, I remember when I think it was Bugaboo introduced a new buggy, and it was like £1,000, and I remember having the thought of, how do we get to reality where we think it's okay to spend £1,000 on a buggy? It's just crazy. So you know, people will spend a few £1,000s on buggies, on cots and gear that they really do not need because they don't know any better. And that used to really disappoint me and anger me really, because it's just not okay to do that. So spend that money on your boudoir, or spend that money on a postnatal doula or a lactation consultant, or something that's going to actually be helpful rather than you know, and give you the experience that you desire rather than stuff that you really don't need.
Yeah, and I got a quick story on that as well, because I was pregnant for Sam when I was in Australia, and I didn't know any other mums or people who were pregnant, because my peer group was corporate healthcare. And I remember going to one of the Sydney markets one day, and there was a woman selling slings that she made. And she was a physio, and she went and consulted different professionals, and she literally just made this beautiful, it was just a red sling, and the back of it had like it was like a car strap, you know, kind of, and she just said, oh, it's really strong. And so I bought it for my sister because she was pregnant. I bought it for myself. And she said she had 4 kids and she never once bought a pram. And I thought, that's it. I'm never going to buy a pram. I'm going to just sling this baby all the way. And I got back to the UK when I was about 3 months pregnant, and the bugaboo craze was happening. And, you know, and I remember going from this, you know, hippie mum of, I'm just going to carry my baby everywhere, to feeling this pressure then of having to buy this pram. So I didn't go brand new. I thought I'm good, you know, so I bought one secondhand, but even that was still like 500 quid. And it turned into being a shopping bag holder, because Sam would never go in the pram. And, you know, I then sold it on, but I just thought, what a complete waste of money. And I know I've spoken to you about this before, and I think it's so interesting, even though I was quite strong-minded about, I wanted to just have this baby in a sling, how I got sucked into that. you know, and it just literally, I remember kind of like taking him for walks, carrying him and pushing the pram.
Yeah, yeah.
I just pushed the pram. He wasn't in it. He was never in it.
Yes, yes. You're better off just buying a shopping trolley, and that's kind of what I
Absolutely.
did. You know, sling on a
Yeah.
shopping trolley, then you
Yeah.
can get your locally, and you can carry your baby. You know,
Yeah.
it's easy.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The second time round, I didn't even go that way. And that sling, I had a sort of a variety of slings on the back and the front, but that red one, just literally like a hammock, went right the way from baby, even to when they were like 2 or 3, because I could literally go for a walk with them. If they got tired, I put them up on my hip and it's supported under their bum. So I could
Yeah.
still kind of like have my hands free, but they were still quite big. So I was surprised at how long that lasted me for something that was
Yeah.
about 40 quid.
Yeah, they're great for toddlers, ring slings. You can just scoop
Yeah.
them up and stick them on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next thing is bed sharing. I know I've mentioned about baby mooning and bed sharing then, but actually, so in the UK, guidelines, guidelines are 6 months for your baby in your room, to counter against cot death and SIDS, and I would say for as long as you want, really, in the bed. And if you're going to do it in the bed, obviously there are things to be mindful of as to how you position the baby and those kind of things. But mothers tend to be tuned into their babies when they're sleeping with them. So again, the boudoir thing, I go back to that, is that if you've got the space for a nursery, you've got the space for the boudoir and a room that your partner can go and sleep in. If they need to get up to work early, you need a good night's sleep, let them go and sleep there. We have this kind of connection in the UK with sleeping with, meaning having sex with, and actually that's not the thing. Sleeping is about sleep and getting your sleep in. It's not about that. Obviously physical contact is really important, but your baby's needs at that time are more important than doing that. And if your partner gets you and gets what it means to be a parent, they'll get that as well, and see that that's what is needed to do. But then you can save money on cots and Moses baskets, all that kind of palaver that you really don't need. Bed sharing, and we personally invested in bigger beds. And actually that was a much better way of spending money, and I just love the space of that. And so both of mine, I think first one was in for till she was about 4, and we moved home and she was like, I want my own room. Like, okay, great. But she would still come in if she wanted to. And some was in for a bit longer, but they just move out when they're ready. And I slept with my parents, and I'm not in their bed, and and kids move out. There's this kind of fear that people have of their baby sleeping in their beds with them and they'll never get out. And I just think it's a very Western kind of thinking that it's okay to have your cat or your dog on your bed or sleeping next to you, but not your baby. And I kind of if people just think about that, at least then they'd be like, oh, cool, yeah, why wouldn't I have my baby in my bed?
Just on that note, I remember we bought one of those little cribs. Sam never slept in it, screamed the whole time, and I remember my midwife saying, just put him in bed with you and both get a good night's sleep, because there was so much negative talk around me about, I picked up from everyone around me about, you shouldn't be co-sleeping, you can't give them any bad habits, you'll never get them out of your bed. He never slept in his cot. He ended up sleeping in with us, and we all managed to get a really good night's sleep. And I remember thinking, you do just find your natural shape around them. And then with Nia, I thought I'd be really organized and have one of those, because we'd had bought a cot for Sam that you could pull the side down and have that as an extension on your bed. So, I had that there as a backup, but again, never used it. But I guess there are different options, isn't it, for people, if your bed isn't big enough. But we were lucky, we had a massive bed. But you're absolutely right. I think so many of these things we don't need. And for me, I had to battle through a lot of negative perceptions about this, to find my own way through. And I think sometimes if it's just openly talked about and accepted, I think we just, can just push through a lot of that nonsense that mothers have to put up with if it's not just part of your peer group conversation.
I think things are shifting, now. because when I set up the business, for example, that was in 2000. The concept of bed sharing was in the Western model just wasn't there.
Yeah.
And it's only been in the last few years that the NICE guidelines have said the safest place for a newborn is in the same room, but they
Oh,
haven't yet.
really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for the first 6 months, but they haven't said in bed yet.
Yeah.
Because there are contraindications why you wouldn't want to do that with people if they were on some sleeping tablets or some sort of drugs that made them drowsy, that kind of thing. But for most people, it is fine, perfectly fine. But they're kind of scared into thinking, oh, they must do something particular or whatever. But there isn't really that much to do, really. I mean, there are guidelines. Lullaby Trust and UNICEF and people like that do put out guidelines for people who are new to it, who haven't had the experience themselves or whatever. So there's things like that. Okay. The next thing that I was going to talk about were washable nappies. Now, in the last couple of years, we've had this massive awareness about single-use plastic, and I'm kind of waiting for the next thing to be talked about in washable nappies or disposable nappies, because it's not just one thing that you use once a day. You can be using 6 to 10 disposable nappies, or sometimes maybe less than that, depending on how frequently you change them. But you should really be changing your baby's nappy sort of 4 to 6 times a day. When they're newborn, it's more frequently because they're just pooing all the time. So a single-use nappy is just plastic. That's it, really. It's plastic and chemicals that maybe a bit of paper in there and glues and things. But my original reason for doing washable nappies with my daughter was the cost. I was like, this is going to cost so much money. I'm going to use washables. It's going to be cheaper, environmentally friendly. Didn't like the idea of chucking away disposables into landfill that are going to sit there for hundreds of years. But then it was the information about the chemicals that really was like, no way am I doing this, putting these chemicals next to my child's genitalia. It just didn't make sense, really. I was just too wary of that. I mean, I'm kind of aware of reading labels and avoiding those in my foods, and I see skin as something that we absorb things through.
Absolutely.
And again, that hasn't really come into the public light, really. The fact that our skin is the biggest organ of our body, and things we put on our skin, whether it's creams or ointments. I mean, there are there's things like patches, for example, Nicorette patches and all those kind of things, which are designed to go into the bloodstream through the skin. So we know that happens. So why put these toxic chemicals near our baby's genitalia and on their skin? So that was my personal kind of tipping point for that's it. I'm not.
And the same with shampoos as well, isn't it? Even your hair gets into your bloodstream.
Exactly. And in fact, at the moment, I'm just kind of playing with this as well, because I've got some magnesium lotions and I've got some progesterone cream and all these kind of things. I'm really sort of thinking, gosh, actually, there's a whole world of this that we haven't really kind of tapped into yet on skin, and also chemical messages to other people, and how that kind of harmonizes us, and the heart math stuff around heart coherence. Anyway, that's a sort of different subject. But but washable nappies, just invest in some good washable nappies when you have a baby, and they can be used over and over again with multiple children, save you loads of money. But for me, it's about just disconnecting from toxic plastic stuff that we don't need. And plastics they're not all toxic. There's some really great uses for plastic, cases of computers, all the rest of it. But actually, single-use plastics are just there's no need for them when there's alternatives like fantastic washables. And then the last kind of point is kind of summing all this up, really. It's the circular economy, borrowing, sharing, and just living life without too much stuff, and with the stuff you have, you're just borrowing it for a while and then passing it on to someone, and someone else can make use of it. And so we don't then therefore need to make so much stuff. And it is the capitalist model is supply and demand, and the more stuff people want, the more stuff will be produced. So you can just step out of that and buy from secondhand shops, or online. There's loads of places to buy from. And also, if you are going to buy something new, think, okay, I need this. Maybe you just might need it for the one child, but can you then pass it on for someone else to use through baby banks or through charity shops or whatever else? So you're buying once and you're buying well. And there are now more and more brands that are thinking this way. We've named Bugaboo, but actually they're one of the brands that have always thought like that in terms of how they make stuff, and the longevity of the product. So, you know, in terms of people that make them, you know, it's important that the people are paid well and they are, you know, looked after, and then the raw materials are coming from renewable sources and are then recyclable or can be used and used and used again. So, you know, the circular economy model of things can then be taken back to source, repurposed or rebuilt into something else, so that they're not just built for obsolescence, you know. And if you think about that in every part of your life, you know, not just with your baby, then great. But it's one of those times when you have a new baby that you kind of, these things become more apparent, because you're then thinking, what world am I bringing my child into, you know? And is it one where we just continue consuming until there's just no space for anyone or anything, or do we, you know, buy things mindfully with you know, and look at who makes money out of it, and do I want to give my money to that organization and that company, and what values am I supporting by purchasing, making that purchase? So there's so, and the minimalist kind of lifestyle thing, I think people who think like that, whether it's zero waste or minimalism, whatever name you want to call it, are thinking about their connection to the earth and as a being of this earth, you know, and how they can contribute to making it a better place for us now and for future generations. So rather than the kind of consume and, you know, until you can't consume anymore, and having experiences, you know, all these things are about experiences. I think life is about that, really. But the experiences are in nature or with other people, or doing things rather than buying things, you know.
And it's interesting as well, because I think we always seem to feel like we're separate to nature. You know, the conversations we have is about getting back to nature, and we are nature. You know, ultimately humans, you know, we're mammals. And, you know, but we like to think that we're kind of more superior than anything else on this planet. But, you know, we are nature. We're not, you know, it's not like we have to harmonize. We are nature. And I think the sooner that we realize that we are nature, that the stuff that we're throwing into the oceans and down the drains and all the rubbish in the landfills is ultimately coming back to affect us. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. If there's one thing that you wanted to share with women who are pregnant at the moment, or new mums, any one piece of advice that you'd like them to remember from what you've shared, what would that one thing be?
Oh, just tuning into yourself and your baby, and, you know, just disregarding the noise. You know, there's so much noise, and, you know, I do feel for new mums, because they've got a lot to learn in quite a short space of time, especially if they haven't got that kind of, you know, community around them. So and you do build that community when you have a baby, but it tends to be of women that are in a similar position. So, you know, find your tribe and find people who can support you, and, you know, depending on where you are, you might have to pay for that, but, you know, it's better to spend money on that than on stuff you really don't need.
Absolutely. So brilliant. Thank you so much, Eva, and thank you all for watching and listening. And if you liked this and you want to share it with anybody who you think might also find it of interest, please do. Please hit the subscribe and the notification bell to get more wisdom blogs coming your way soon. So thank you all for listening. Take care. Bye.